Back now to London 2012. It's been billed as a public transport games that will leave a legacy for the future and encourage more disabled people to use public transport. This was a key part of the original Olympic bid, with ambitious claims about a transport system accessible to all. But with just weeks to go and more than 500,000 ticket holders expected to have some kind of mobility problem, some disabled people say the system may not be able to cope. In the latest part of No Go Britain, our series about disability travel, Katie Russell has been looking at how people with disabilities will travel to the Games and investigating whether promises made in the Olympic bid have actually been met.
Yeah, OK, that's not going to happen.
Please mind the gap between the train and the platform.
London's gearing up to host the Olympics and Paralympics. The capital and its transport system will be tested as never before. London 2012 was billed the most accessible games ever. But one recent disability advisor to the body in charge of travel, Transport for London, isn't on board.
I'm worried, and I think TfL are worried, and obviously are trying to address it, but that what we're going to find is just meltdown in terms of the accessible features of the system. And that it's going to be almost impossible for disabled people to get around.
Organisers have described London 2012 as the public transport games. Most of the spectators coming to the Olympic Park will be expected to come here by public transport. In the latest part of our No Go Britain series, we decided to look at what that will mean for disabled travellers. We've enlisted the help of 4 disabled people who rely on public transport to get around. They use buses, trains and taxis, all of which will be under greater strain this summer. The original Olympic bid made bold claims. It said London's 21,000 taxis and the entire Docklands Light Railway are fully accessible to all. It went on, by 2005 all of London's buses will be fully accessible as well. It said the only constraint identified is the provision of mobility impaired access at all London Underground stations. Heathrow Airport will be many travellers' introduction to the Games. But if you're disabled, perhaps don't take the Piccadilly line into town. Channel 4 News tested the line with wheelchair user Louise Hickman. Staff at the station helped Louise onto the platform.
Once we moved beyond Heathrow Airport, I could see that there were various degrees of steps. The gap was different between the train and the platform. Yeah. OK, that's not going to happen.
Please mind the gap between the train and the platform.
On the map, the Piccadilly line has 11 step-free stations. You'd think that would mean Louise could get off at them. But often, step-free means there's a lift from the platform to the street, but there's still a step off the train. Louise is stuck.
I was actually quite shocked about when the platform was higher than the actual train, because that, to me, was more difficult to navigate. Oh, are you okay?
This is Hammersmith.
Okay, so 6-inch step there. It's too dangerous to even reverse down there. I've got my luggage as well.
37 stops later, and literally at the end of the line, the train turned round with Louise still on it.
We've just been to Cockfosters and I can't get off the train there. Now we're heading back to Heathrow Airport 1.5 hours later.
There was nowhere on the line this electric wheelchair user could get off, except back at Heathrow. TfL have a system of passenger assistance you can request. They also told us there'll be humps and portable ramps to help wheelchairs off trains at key stations during the Games. More generally, staff will give advice on travel.
Well, this is a real priority issue for us. Getting people around during the Olympic times is very important, particularly for people who have, need some support. So we'll be out there, not only my regular staff, of which there are 12,000, but also the travel ambassadors and all the volunteers out there to get people around London and to have the right information at their fingertips so they can tell people, if this route's not available, here is your alternative.
One alternative, the capital's buses. The bid promised they'd all be accessible by now. Youth worker Zara Todd has started logging every bus journey she takes.
About a year ago, I got driven to insanity by having about 4 days when I was trying to leave work where I had to wait an hour for an accessible bus. I have 6 months' worth of bus journeys and so they can see when it's been good and when it hasn't. And on the whole, on a daily basis, I probably have a 50% success rate.
We followed Zara for a morning.
Thank you.
A trip to Parliament, one of London's biggest tourist attractions, revealed a problem disabled travellers often complain about.
Yeah, that's too high. I'll get off at the next stop. There was no way that a wheelchair user can get off at that stop at all. And the sad thing is that TfL's journey planner tell you to get off of that stop.
Zara's records show that she took about 350 buses in the last 6 months, had problems with around 150 of them, including 50 she couldn't get on at all.
I'm very, very happy to get to go to the opening ceremony of the Paralympic Games. I am absolutely terrified at the prospect of how I am going to get to the opening ceremony of the Paralympic Games because I just think that the system is going to be put under so much pressure.
So what about taxis? The original Olympic bid claimed all of London's black cabs are fully accessible to disabled people, but at No Go Britain we've spoken to travellers who don't agree. If you spot one, shout. I went out with wheelchair user Rhea. She has to travel by taxi because her form of muscular dystrophy means she can't use other public transport. Thank you. On a sunny Monday morning, things went well at first. Later on, I got a flavour of some of Rhea's frustrations. No, actually, he did drive on. He saw you and drove on.
Yeah.
What's the problem with taxis?
First of all, they don't stop. If they do, then there's a bag full of excuses come out. I don't have a ramp. My ramp is not working. I've hurt my back.
I mean, is it the majority who behave right, or...?
I'd say 50-50.
But it's not just a problem for wheelchair users. Guide dog owners from around the country have told us that some taxi drivers are reluctant to take their custom.
I've been refused a few times and also been ignored by the Manchester cabs that are very similar to the London cabs.
Yeah, he's stopping. Great. Marie Howarth lives in Oldham but is coming to the Games. She agreed to test out what London cabbies make of her dog Bailey.
Find it, Bailey. Good boy. Up you go.
Once again, things started off okay. At the first 2 locations, we were picked up without a problem. Thank you. And then we reached Pall Mall. No, he's not stopping. He's looked at us, but he's carried on. Oh, look, here's another one. Put your hand out. No, he's not stopping either. Okay.
That's
charming.
Just on today alone, I don't feel confident enough to travel by taxi in London with a guide dog. I'm not saying that all incidences are going to be the same.
What do you say to what transport bosses are suggesting, which is 100% of London taxis are accessible? What would your reaction to that be?
I would say they really need to go back and reassess that estimation.
So does this former disability advisor think London's taxis and buses are accessible?
Technically, yes. The equipment is there in terms of wheelchair ramps, in terms of contrasting handrails and all those things that have been really part of guidance and legislation for some time. In practice, no, because the way that the system is working at the moment means that it's not reliable.
Do you feel that the Olympic Delivery Authority engaged quickly enough with issues around transport accessibility?
I think initially, yes, the ODA did, and so did TfL. The problem is that once the accessible transport strategy had been written, somewhere along the line it shifted into access as a lesser priority. And access helped us get the bid, and the lack of money has clearly influenced that.
In 2008, Games organisers released an accessible transport strategy, detailing their plans for getting disabled spectators around. But Channel 4 News has learnt they haven't published a full update since 2009. The Olympic Delivery Authority told us,
"Our accessible transport strategy has been shared with numerous transport experts and disability user groups to ensure it is fit for purpose. Consequently, the option to update the strategy was not needed. Accessibility improvements have been hardwired into the £6.5 billion that has been spent on the transport network ahead of the Games.
In places like Green Park, tens of millions have gone into this important Olympic hub to accommodate disabled travellers. But Channel 4 News has spoken to a mobility scooter user who fell and hit her head as she tried to leave a train here last month. TfL has apologised and says this station will definitely be entirely accessible by the Olympics. Games organisers are expecting 23,000 people with mobility issues at peak times. They've estimated there'll be 6 wheelchair users on every Jubilee Line train heading to the Olympic Park. So, will London's transport network cope? We'll find out in 59 days' time.
Katie Russell reporting.